14 million people worldwide are considered to be displaced persons, refugees in search of homes. This group of Indo-Chinese refugees await their resettlement in the United States with hope, innocent of the complex society they will soon meet. For the Hmong, Highland tribes people from Southeast Asia, the personal adaptation process of resettling in America is especially extreme. Victims of the United States' secret war in Laos and its political aftermath, this family has chosen to accept their ironic fate. They are becoming American. There are many camps like this one at Nam Yau, Thailand. The United Nations High Commission for Refugees established the camps throughout Southeast Asia to deal with the masses of refugees flowing out of Indo-Chinese war zones. They are not homes, but places to wait for resettlement, places to rest from a past of fear and dispersal, places to wait out an unknown future. The housing is simple, the diet, subsistence. For the last 6 years, Heng Su has waited here in Nam Yau in remote northeastern Thailand. About 11,000 other refugees, mostly Hmong and Mien, tribespeople from Highland Laos, crowd into the village-like camp. Okay, the supply man tells Su, you get 12 measures of rice for the next 3 days. There are 9 members in Heng Su's family. The rice will feed them 2 meals a day until the next ration. Su was married in Laos in 1974 and has 1 son. But he has also taken responsibility for his brother's widow, Mong Vong, and her 5 children. He was 26 when his brother died last year in camp. Mong Vong was 36, a farmer like Heng Su and a highly skilled embroiderer. She did not become Su's second wife when her husband died, as is customary in Hmong tradition. I didn't want to marry my young brother-in-law, so I didn't, she said. I don't want to have any more children until I have a permanent home. Heng Vu, Mong's oldest son, is 8 years old. Heng Kia is 13, the eldest of Mong Vong's living children. One of the great strengths of this family and of Hmong people in general is their strong sense of family unity, based on patrilineal clan structure. There are about 21 Hmong clans organized from male family lines. Mong Vong left her own clan when she married, became a member of her husband's clan, even though she kept her family name. Chow Ta also joined her husband's clan when she married Heng Su. Together, just after their wedding, they fled Laos in 1976. It was a rigorous trek out of their lush jungle highlands, a journey that many Hmong did not survive. Heng Chaw, their son, was born last year in camp. It is unlikely he will ever see his parents' homeland. The Hmong have not always lived in confinement. A proud and independent people, they have maintained a strong cultural identity through many centuries of migration through China and into Southeast Asia. Once a lowland valley people, they moved to more defendable mountain terrain, eluding the dominating attempts of the Chinese Han for nearly 150 years. The Hmong kept to the mountaintops, kept to themselves. Theirs has always been an agrarian culture, and movement a way of life. Economic strength and independence in the face of political control by the Chinese, the Lao, and the French came from their cultivation of opium poppies. Two and a half million Hmong still live in China, and many thousand populate northern Thailand, Laos, and Vietnam. But many of the Hmong from Laos, some 250,000 of them, fell into a political entanglement which broke their thread to this long cultural continuity. In the mid-1960s, major leaders of the Hmong tribes in northern Laos were contacted by members of the CIA. Already a general in the Royal Lao Army, Vong Pao became an ally to the U.S., encouraging village men and boys to fight as hired soldiers for the secret war in Laos. Secret because at that time, very few people in America knew about this clandestine U.S. involvement in Laos. $15,000 to 20,000 Hmong soldiers fought first-line Vietnamese troops for 5 to 6 years between 1968 and 1973. Assisted by the CIA and Air America, a private airlines on contract to the CIA, the Hmong became known as tough guerrilla fighters for the USA. The secret war, engaging people from Mien, Khai Mu, Lua, and Hmong hill tribes, was designed to tie down as many North Vietnamese troops as possible, keeping them from moving along the Ho Chi Minh Trail to South Vietnam. Some Hmong soldiers were paid. Some, exchanging their services for rice rations, became dependent upon airdrop supplies, while their own crops were left unattended. Hmong casualties ran to the tens of thousands, 10 times those faced proportionately by American soldiers in Vietnam. There is a startling absence of men and boys of fighting age among the surviving Hmong population. Large numbers of widows were given money for the loss of their husbands and sons. Mac Allen Thompson, currently Refugee Affairs Officer for the U.S. Embassy in Bangkok, and formerly in charge of USAID rice drops into Laos.
During the 15, 20 years of U.S. involvement in Indochina, the Hmong probably had the closest relationship with the U.S. government of any other, or more so than any other ethnic group, whether in Vietnam, in Cambodia, or in Laos. The Hmong now, as a group, are in difficult situations because of this. They're the only group that the Vietnamese have pretty well singled out for anti-Hmong operations.
After the UN ceasefire agreement in Laos in 1973, almost overnight the Royal Lao government was replaced by the revolutionary Pathet Lao. 3,000 Hmong were airlifted out of Laos by Air America in 1975. They were the lucky few. John Crowley from the Joint Voluntary Agency in Bangkok remembers those times.
It became clear very early that the officials in Laos regarded the Hmong as threats, and There is evidence of severe sustained attacks, artillery and troops, reports of chemicals of some sort, poison chemicals being used against the Hmong. Those refugees that I've spoken with describe having lived in fear of their lives and living in the jungle for months and years, eating literally roots and leaves to keep alive, and making an arduous trek which lasts weeks or more to get to the Mekong River and cross to Thailand.
So it is here, in Thailand, where fully 10% of the wartime population of Laos sought asylum, that Su, Chao, and Hmong await their unknown future. 9 people sharing 2 small rooms. Their options are clear. Repatriate, return to Laos, face certain capture by the Vietnamese and Pathet Lao forces patrolling the area and likely death, or sustain the holding pattern of restricted camp life, despite rumors of ration cutting and a growing strain on their Thai hosts. Or they could apply for immigration and seek resettlement in a third country, alien to their life experiences. Pang Su, Chao Ta, and Mong Vong decided to apply for immigration to the U.S. They have relatives in Seattle, Washington, and have received letters with good reports about life in America. Their family case histories have been documented by the Joint Voluntary Agency of the Refugee Section of the U.S. Embassy in Bangkok. The Immigration and Naturalization Service qualifications seem to be fulfilled. The family is called in for a departure interview. Have there been any changes or problems in your family? Have any of you been sick or had TB? No, we're healthy, Sue replied. You should get ready to go to Seattle in the state of Washington, USA. The Joint Voluntary Agency has found a sponsor for you, and there is a house ready for you there. Keep these important papers with you and don't be afraid. Sue is afraid, but he knows there is no future for his family in Thailand. Once a self-sufficient farmer, owner of a farm, horses, pigs, and chickens, he knows there is not enough arable land to accommodate him or the thousands of other refugees in Thailand. Competent in the ways of subsistent living, Sue knows he must take the skills he has and build a new life. What possible future is there here for one's children? Preparing for their long journey, Sue calls in his clan shaman. This spiritual guide will officiate at a ceremony to free family spirits for travel. Smoking opium, the shaman enters the spirit realm. Opium is a substance used sparingly by the Hmong, mostly by the old and sick, and ritualistically by the clan shamans. The shaman will burn elaborately cut pieces of paper moistened with pig's blood. His eyes shaded from this world, he gallops out to the spirit realm, astride his ceremonial bench, contacts appropriate spirits, strikes a bargain. The pig is offered as a sacrifice. Hang Su has sought assurance from the shaman, assurance that the spirits of his family will be readied for a journey that will lift them from one world and drop them in another. Nothing in their past beyond the desire to survive could prepare Su's family for the events spiraling in on them.
Don't cry, little brother. Stay here and love our mother and father. They only have you now. Whatever you do, always listen to them. Tell them not to cry too much. We'll always remember them. We'll write and tell them how it is in America. I would never leave you, brother, for anything, but this is survival. We can't know our future. I don't know what will happen if I stay in Thailand with the children. We have to go. Take my hand one time because you are leaving. Let's just hold hands. We may never be a family again. Tell the children they won't be seeing Grandma anymore. Even if you only know our faces, please remember us. Please write to us.
After 20 hours on the bus to Panatnakom, a major transit center for Indo-Chinese refugees, the family faces medical exams and final approval of their forms. Within 3 weeks, Sue and his family moved quickly through Lumpini Camp in Bangkok and onto a plane chartered by the International Committee for Migration to transport refugees throughout the world. It was a 24-hour plane trip from Bangkok to Oakland, California. The transfer procedures and customs check gave the refugees their first glimpse of the U.S.
Whose suitcase is this? This yours? How many people in the family? 9? That's not very much for 9 people, is it? Everything they own. Put it in 5 bags. Now this for the necklace? Okay. This is the whole dining room set. Dining room set. Just the tables. I really feel sorry. I would hate to be in the same position. Coming into a strange country, not speaking the language. You know, what we see here, that's their whole, what you see is what they have. So when you figure a whole family, their cookware is contained in one bag that we'd probably throw away, say that's too fiddly. They're starting from this, from 0. Anything above that is gravy.
Please be sure that your seatbelts are securely fastened. We'll be landing very shortly at Seattle. Thank you.
In a housing complex in central urban Seattle, their sponsor, a Hmong cousin, has arranged for an apartment. 41 other Hmong families live in the facility, and clan relatives greet the travelers. Hang Dua, apartment assistant manager, introduces the family to their new home. It's very different in here. Life's different like this. This is the kitchen. When the knob is this way, the stove is on. This one for the front, this one for the back. The fan spins around and takes all the smell away with it. If you move this button, it will turn the heat on. In the winter, you can make it warm just by turning to this number. At 50 to 60, it is really hot.
I don't read. I don't know any alphabet. How can I use all these things?
The fireplace can be used for burning wood. You can roast meat in these like we used to do. In our country, we like to stay close to the fire. You can still do the same here, but don't let any fire out because it can melt the carpet. This is for if you want to take a bath. Turn this on here and get a shower. This is life in America. You have to learn these things. Be careful when you sleep and close all the windows. Don't leave any windows open because some bad people might come in the house. It's a little different in this country. Here is the lock. Pull the curtains when you sleep. Watch out for your security. The immediate needs of most refugee families are met with aid from the American welfare system. Federally funded assistance administered by the state is designed to help cope with early adjustments to the U.S. economy. At the welfare office, the family is informed of the procedures set up to help refugees. Mong Vong signs her name to an application for aid to families with dependent children. Through a translator, she is asked the same questions as any other welfare applicant. Did you have your children before or after you were married?
After my marriage.
What is your husband's name?
His name was Chai He.
What did he look like? What were his eyes like?
They were just like everybody's eyes.
Did your husband marry someone else?
No.
Do you know somebody who knows your husband?
No.
What is his mother's name?
Her name is Tai Hyung.
Do you know where he lives? Is he alive or dead?
He's dead. He died.
After you're in the country for 36 months, you are terminated, whether you have any income or not.
Once they enter the country, much of what happens to them is determined by the voluntary agencies. Some of the agencies are religious, some of them
Marshall
are
Herlick,
sectarian.
professor of anthropology,
And
University
these are
of
the
Washington.
agencies that assist in refugee relocation. Throughout the whole process of relocation, there has never been any policy of trying to resettle urban refugees in urban areas or rural refugees in rural areas. If there's been any policy at all, it's been to scatter refugees widely throughout the country so that they'll assimilate and become American as quickly as possible. What's happened as a result of that is pre-literate hill farmers find themselves living in the middle of urban American cities. And perhaps they had no expectation at all as to what city life is like, as to what skills are necessary to live in cities. They had no expectations that they would be living among strangers. They didn't really know what they were getting into.
Li Vang, a distant cousin of Sue's and an exceptional student of English, has been here for 5 years. He still remembers what it's like being a newcomer.
The first time I come into Seattle, I looked around and there's all this big building. It turned out to be a whole big city, you know, where everything is people, and you go and there's only movies and theaters and people and cars and freeways, you know. There are so many different people in this country, black, whites, and Asians and Filipinos and a lot of people like that. And you look at them and you feel like they, even though they're different, they still belong there because they speak so much English. I didn't know how to speak the language, and I feel foreign, you know. I feel like I was a foreigner. It makes me feel like I have a problem that I can't solve, speaking the language and knowing them and just socialize with them. I remember this place in our country, in Laos. There's this plain, you know, just green, plain green grass. And you sit there and watching the water is coming from the mountain, and it just comes down so nicely, and you can hear only the sound of water and birds, you know, flying. And you wish that you were there with your girls and your boyfriend. And it's a feeling where you feel like you want to dream, you know. It's better not to think about it. If you think about it, it will make you feel very sad.
Most of them start out being quite confused. When Hmong people lived in Laos, they grew their own food, they slaughtered their own animals, they hunted for meat in the forest. And when they come into a grocery store in the US, what they see is not food, but boxes, things wrapped in cellophane, things wrapped in plastic. And it really takes a while before people understand that these are things that you're supposed to eat.
Is this the soap? What kind of meat is this? It's all covered up. Is it a cow or a pig? Oh, good, oranges. Let's take a bag and hurry home. Don't take too many.
Do we have money to pay for these things? Do I put the money in here?
1163. Okay, I need more. It's 1163. This is 10. Out of 20. 837 is your change. There's 8. Thank you. 39, 75, 89, 49.
Money. Money. Good. Good. It's money. It's money. Good. It's money. What's this? It's nickel. Cook? It's nickel. It's a nickel. Read this.
The English as a Second Language class, called ESL, attempts to leap the greatest hurdle most refugees face, speaking English. Refugees used to receive over a year's language training funded by a block grant to the state. It has recently been cut in half. Unlike many European immigrants who have faced the language challenge in America, the Hmong come from a pre-literate tradition. They had no alphabet until 30 years ago, when missionaries introduced a written notation to them. Most Hmong have never studied language in school. They have a different way of expressing verb tense and plurals in their native tongue. 6 months of classes barely scratch the surface of their need for language training. Rebecca Tesdell.
For most refugees who are in English classes, it takes probably a couple of years to get to a point where they can function comfortably in English, and even longer to prepare themselves for any kind of training or jobs.
Read this.
Hey, a quarter. Jumbo balloons a quarter. 25 cents. A mile long and a yard wide, a quarter. Oh, for God's sake. Hey, a quarter. Thank you. Quarter.
After 3 months in the U.S., Chow and Hmong are introduced to the public market in Midtown Seattle.
Okay. Hi, you're fresh fish here. Come on.
Renee Taylor, director of the Indo-Chinese Women's Program at the YMCA, has been working with refugee women for the last 3 years.
The Indo-Chinese Women's Program, as part of its second week, takes a field trip down to the public market.
Most of the women don't have a lot of experience using some of the modern appliances and equipment that we have in the United States. They don't know how to take the bus. They don't know how our money system is set up. They don't know really how to go shopping. They don't really even know what would go in the refrigerator, what goes in a cupboard. You don't put chicken in the toaster, which is kind of a universal joke around here. I guess somebody trying to do that.
Lemon. Lemon. What color is that? Yellow. Good. And what is this?
Housekeeping in general, when you're used to a dirt floor and you've got to deal with rugs, how do you even clean them? I heard of one family who would just kind of hose down their living room down the heating vent. I mean, they would just kind of put, they thought that was where the dust went.
And what are those? I don't know. What is that?
I am constantly hearing things that just make me go, oh my gosh, why didn't I think of that? They tend to carry a lot of money on their person because in their own country, a sign of wealth is wearing all this beautiful jewelry and this beautiful stitchery. That's a sign of status. They're very vulnerable. They don't know that people just can't walk into your house. A lot of times they'll be sitting around and somebody will walk into their house and take things. And they don't know what's accepted and what's not in our culture, so they're really afraid to insult someone. They think maybe somebody's going to send them back or whatever. So they aren't real sure what our culture is all about.
And many Americans are not sure what the refugees are all about.
I think that the government is getting kind of out of hand by letting all these refugees come over here. They have to give out so much money to the refugees. That's the reason that they're cutting out a lot of the programs and things like this.
You know, you read the paper every day and you read about refugees and you read about wars, and in my mind, I never connected with who is really the victim of all that.
The kids get on your nerves, and the people don't understand English very well.
They're not too clean.
These folks used to live in a bamboo house with palm fronds on the top and dirt roads, and their refrigerator was a cool place down in the river.
See, the Hmong have a saying that if there's always a piece of ground, they will never go starving. They never have to worry about getting some money in Laos because there's no job. You work for yourself, you know. They don't call that a job. They just say go and work, you know. You don't worry about something that you're doing for them and you get paid. You just worry about your own stomach, when it's going to be empty, when it's going to be full, you know. When they come to this country, the only thing they talk about is if you don't have a job to support your family, then you will be starving. Everything is so modern, everything is done by machine, not by manual work, you know, and they're worried about, I don't even speak the language, and I won't be even qualified for the job than a regular American person. They're not the type of people who have education, they're only a tribal people. It really makes them feel depressed, you know.
There seem to be few attempts to channel traditional Hmong skills toward productive employment. The batik and reverse applique work of the women, however, is receiving attention in craft circles. Hmong and Chao have been asked to sell their work with a Hmong crafts group at an international district street fair. While the U.S. refugee population is going up, Congress's appropriation for refugees is going down, 29% down as of the 1981-82 fiscal year. The welfare assistance supporting refugees may soon be cut from 3 years to 18 months in duration. Refugees without jobs will be forced to draw state welfare, since 60% of the nation's refugees live in 40 counties in 10 states. Schools, hospitals, police, and welfare agencies in those localities will shoulder an added burden. Sue doesn't like the idleness afforded him by the welfare checks. He wants to work, but he doesn't even know what he can do within the American working context.
You looking for what?
Job.
A job?
Yeah.
You speak it in English?
Yes.
How much?
I don't know.
You don't know? You
Yeah.
don't speak any English. I can't help you.
Yeah.
You can't get a job here. You'll have to go somewhere else, you know?
No.
Yes. You'll have to go somewhere else. I can't help you. There's no job here.
No.
No job.
Yeah.
No job.
Yes.
Bob Johnson, Director of International Rescue Committee, Seattle.
It's not just refugees are being cut off. It's essentially all poor people are being given reduced options by the federal government. And it's going to particularly boil down to the refugee population because they are probably the most vulnerable of all the low-income groups. They're less educated to our system. They're less sophisticated. They have less capability of finding their own jobs. So their resources are pretty strapped as is. So, we're looking at big problems. To me, it's sort of an absolute crime that refugees were brought in 1975, given an unspecified period of time to become educated and get jobs. Those people were the educated refugees for the most part, the Vietnamese. And later, through the years, since 1975, the less sophisticated, less educated groups have come in. And now the length of time is being cut back. And people are going to be really scrambling, predict a lot of problems. Already the food banks are being utilized by refugees, which creates potential for racial strife. People are sort of beginning to scramble at the bottom level.
Bus, bus. Everybody, come on, everybody. Bus, bus, bus. Girl. Man.
Dog.
Very nice. What's this? Fish.
School brings refugee children into daily contact with American language and ways. Flexible and energetic, they can easily adapt. But what of their parents? What of their cultural heritage? Some anthropologists project that there will never be a significant Hmong American population, that we may be witnessing one further example of ethnocide, the destruction of the traditional values of a group of people. When the members of a simple society find themselves in the middle of a political storm, surrounded by stronger technologies and more dominant political powers, their entire way of life, centuries of developed cultural values, can be wiped out without anyone even noticing. Very few people choose to examine what of value is being lost. "50,000 Hmong are now dispersed across America, with large groups in St. Paul, Minnesota, Orange County, California, Missoula, Montana, Portland, Oregon, Providence, Rhode Island, and Seattle, Washington. The people in these communities are developing supportive networks, relying upon each other and their leaders to reinstitute their close family and tribal ties. Hang Sao is the leader of the Hmong in Washington state. At a yearly community picnic, he discusses problems facing the Hmong. "I look for a job. Everybody expects you to have a degree or experience. I don't have a degree. No degree, no job. We are the lost people. If people in this country had to work as hard as we did, what would they do? If Americans tried to do the work we did in Laos, they couldn't do it. They're too soft. I don't speak English, but I have a dishwashing job. I try to do my best, but I don't know anything. They say, 'How are you?' I say, 'Okay.' They say, 'What do you want to eat?' I say, 'Okay.' They could say, 'Eat shit,' and I'd say, 'Okay.'" Keep trying. Go to class. Talk with anybody in the kitchen who will talk to you. You know, plates will never say anything to you. Plates don't talk. Anthropologist Marshall Herlick.
The Hmong have a very strong sense of community. Individuals feel responsible towards their families, particularly the older people in their families, their mothers, their fathers, their grandparents. They have a very strong sense of responsibility towards their village or their neighborhood, towards other people in their clan. And it's a kind of responsibility that I think many Americans could learn from, because it's the sort of responsibility that means people should help each other.
After 6 months in the U.S., Sioux, Chow, Hmong, and their children are still a close, supportive family unit. They are adapting to American life. The children are changing quickly, adopting Western dress and tastes. Mong Vong sets a tone of stability in the sparse apartment. There is joy here, but threats of no jobs, no English class, no welfare loom in the future. Mong's pragmatic wisdom and support will be there for her children. Will it be enough? The responsibility of supporting this large family, once the welfare and educational programs are cut, rests on Hang Sue. His traditional sense of self-reliance and male leadership has been compromised by years of disruption and idleness. He deals with depression, self-doubt, stress. Chow Ta is quick, candid with her rapidly acquired vocabulary, selling her handiwork, teaching the children. She grasps onto opportunities to learn with humor and determination. It's not easy to imagine the shock, the disorientation, the loneliness, hope, and curiosity these people seem to feel as they face resettlement in America. Their traditional cultural values are challenged every day. As a living consequence of the secret war in Laos, the plight of the Hmong is not to be ignored. No one can predict how they will fare in the future. But if history is an accurate indicator, these highland tribespeople will carry with them, even to this complex American society, the spirit of survival.
Down below the red spot that actually changes, reverses direction. You see little turbulent spots farther to the south that resembles the pattern around the red spot, but